The early morning air in the livestock auction was thick with dust and noise. Farmers and ranchers in worn jackets moved through the crowded pens, their voices a low rumble of conversation. They were practical people, mostly kind, but here to make necessary purchases for their land. They examined strong horses and healthy heifers with experienced eyes, looking for animals that could work or produce. The sharp smell of animals and hay filled every corner of the place. Then the main gate to the auction ring creaked open. A young cow was led inside by a handler. She did not look like the other animals. Her steps were slow and unsteady, each one seeming to require great effort. Her brown and white coat was matted and dirty. Streaks of red stained her back legs and flank. She had given birth to her calf only a few hours before. The auctioneer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker, but it lacked its usual energetic speed. He knew this animal was not a prize. The cow stood miserably in the center of the ring, her head hanging low. Her big, dark eyes were clouded with exhaustion and a deep confusion. She seemed to be searching the faces in the crowd for something she had lost. The bidding started, and it was slow. The numbers called out were low. A few people shifted uncomfortably on the wooden bleachers, finding it difficult to watch. Most saw only an animal that was used up and broken. They saw a creature that had nothing left to give. Standing apart from the main crowd, near a fence post weathered gray by the seasons, was a rancher named Eli. He had not come to the auction to buy an animal. His old truck was hitched to an empty trailer meant for bags of grain and new troughs. He watched the proceedings with a quiet stillness, his hands tucked into his pockets. His own farm was a modest patch of land that served more as a sanctuary than a business. It was a place where old animals could live out their days in peace, not a place for profitable livestock. When the young cow was led into the ring, Eli's calm demeanor shifted. He straightened up, his eyes narrowing not with calculation, but with concern. He saw the obvious physical distress, the way she favored her side. But he saw something else that the others missed. He saw the profound sorrow in her gaze, a deep longing that had nothing to do with the pain in her body. She was a mother searching for her child. A conflict stirred within him. His logical mind whispered of the cost of medicine, the endless hours of care, the low chance of success for an animal so weakened. But a stronger, deeper feeling argued back. It was a simple, undeniable refusal to let her story end here, in this dusty ring, surrounded by indifference. He could not turn away from that silent plea for mercy. As the auctioneer's calls became more half-hearted, ready to dismiss her as unsellable, Eli's hand went up. His voice was clear and steady, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. He stated a price, a small sum, but it was enough. A ripple of surprise went through the onlookers. Heads turned to see who had spoken. They saw Eli, and their expressions were a mix of curiosity and pity. They could not understand his reasoning. They saw a foolish waste of good money. But Eli heard only the grateful silence that followed his bid, and he knew his decision was right. The heavy metal gate of the auction yard clanged shut behind them, and for the first time since she had been led into that noisy ring, the world became quiet. The young cow stood unsteadily in the dim, enclosed space of Eli's horse trailer. The floor vibrated gently beneath her hooves as the truck's engine rumbled to life. Every muscle in her body was tense, expecting another sharp turn or another loud noise. She could smell the unfamiliar scents of this new man, of old hay, and of diesel fuel. She braced herself, waiting for the next difficult thing to happen. But the journey that followed was nothing like the frantic, bumpy ride that had brought her to the auction. Eli drove with a painstaking slowness, carefully navigating every pothole and crack in the country road. He seemed to understand that every jolt sent a fresh wave of pain through her tired body. Through the trailer's vents, she could hear the steady, calming hum of the truck's engine and the soft whistle of the wind outside. It was a soothing sound, so different from the shouting and chaos she had just left behind. Inside the cab, Eli did not turn on the radio. Instead, he spoke to her in a low, gentle voice, a continuous murmur meant to reassure her. He told her about the green fields she would see and the quiet barn that was waiting for her. He promised her she was safe now. She could not understand his words, but the tone was a blanket of comfort, and for the first time in many hours, she allowed herself to lie down on the trailer's floor, her head heavy with exhaustion. After what felt like a long time, the truck rolled to a smooth stop and the engine fell silent. The world was quiet again, but this was a different kind of quiet. It was the peaceful hush of a place far from the main road. The trailer door swung open, not with a harsh shove, but with a slow and careful motion. Soft evening light flooded in, and the cow saw Eli standing there, his outline framed by the setting sun. He did not pull on her rope or yell to make her move. He simply waited, offering a handful of sweet, fresh alfalfa hay. The smell was wonderful, and drawn by it, she found the strength to rise and take a few hesitant steps down the ramp onto the solid, welcoming earth. She stood in a large yard, looking at a white farmhouse with a friendly porch, a red barn with its top doors open to the sky, and fields that stretched out toward a line of distant trees. The air smelled clean, of grass and earth and rain. It was nothing like the dusty, crowded pens she had known. Eli did not lead her to a large pasture with the other animals. Instead, he walked her slowly toward the open door of the barn. Inside, the air was cool and carried the sweet smell of dried hay and clean wood. He led her to a spacious stall that had been prepared just for her. The floor was covered in a deep, soft bed of golden straw, so thick it felt like a cushion under her sore feet. In one corner was a large bucket of cool, clear water. In another, a pile of the most fragrant hay she had ever smelled. Eli left her for a moment to settle and then returned with a bucket of warm water and a collection of soft, clean cloths. He moved slowly, letting her see his every action so she would not be afraid. He began to gently clean the dried blood and dirt from her matted fur. The warm water was soothing on her skin. His hands were careful and patient, working through the tangled mess without pulling or causing her any new pain. He spoke to her the entire time, calling her Bella, a name he had chosen for her because it meant beautiful. He treated her not like a broken thing, but like a creature worthy of kindness and care. When he was finished, her coat was clean, and she felt a little more like herself. He brought her a special pail of warm mash, a mixture of grains and molasses that was easy for her to eat and full of strength for her weary body. As she ate, the warmth spreading through her, Eli sat on an overturned bucket just outside her stall, simply keeping her company. He wanted her to know she was not alone. Bella finished her food and drank deeply from the water bucket. The fear that had been a constant knot in her stomach for so long began to slowly loosen. Her body was still aching and her heart still carried a deep, lonely ache for the calf she had lost, but for the first time, she felt a flicker of something new. It was the feeling of safety. It was the feeling of being seen not for what she could produce, but for simply being. She looked at the man sitting quietly in the growing darkness of the barn, and she knew, in the way animals know these things, that he was different. She was still wounded. She was still a mother without her child, but she was no longer forgotten. She had been found, and in the quiet of that safe barn, she finally rested. The first light of dawn was just beginning to color the sky when Eli stepped out onto his porch. The air was cool and still, holding the quiet peace of the morning. But his mind was not on the sunrise. It was back in the barn, on the deep, sorrowful look in Bella's eyes. He had given her a safe stall, clean water, and good food. Her body was on the mend. Yet he knew a vital piece of her was still missing. Her sadness was not just from being hurt. It was the grief of a mother separated from her child. He could not let that stand. After a quick breakfast, he left a large pile of fresh hay within Bella's reach, gave her a reassuring pat on the neck, and climbed into his truck. He was going back to the auction. He had to find her calf. The auction yard was much quieter than the day before. Only a few workers were there cleaning out the empty pens. Eli asked around until he found the man who had sold Bella. The man was busy hosing down a concrete floor and seemed annoyed by the interruption. Eli asked him about the calf. The man was gruff, shrugging and saying it was just business, that the calf had been sold separately. Eli persisted, his voice calm but firm. He explained that he was not there to cause trouble. He just wanted to know where the baby had gone. Finally, seeing the genuine concern on Eli's face, the man relented. He said the young bull calf had been bought by a large commercial dairy farm a good 40 miles away. He even wrote the farm's name on a scrap of paper. Eli thanked him and got back in his truck, his mission now clear. The drive to the dairy farm felt much longer than 40 miles. Eli's hands were tight on the steering wheel. He knew this was a long shot. Large operations like this were about efficiency, not sentiment. They bought calves to raise for milk production or other purposes. They were unlikely to want to sell one back. He rehearsed what he would say as he turned into the long, paved driveway lined with identical, large metal barns. The scale of the place was immense and impersonal. He found the owner, a busy man named Mr. Higgins, in a cluttered office. Eli told him the whole story. He spoke of finding Bella, of her condition, and of the profound sadness he saw in her. He explained that he had bought her not for profit, but to give her a peaceful life. He said that life could not truly begin without her calf. Mr. Higgins listened, leaning back in his chair. He looked at Eli as if he were from another planet. The idea of a rancher spending good money and time on a single, worthless cow and then tracking down her calf was completely foreign to his way of thinking. He talked about his systems and his bottom line. For a moment, Eli's heart sank, thinking he had failed. But then he saw Mr. Higgins glance out the window at the hundreds of calves in the pens. He saw the man's expression soften, just a little. Maybe he thought of his own children. Maybe he was just tired. With a sigh, Mr. Higgins agreed. He wouldn't just give the calf away, but he would sell it to Eli for the same price he had paid. It was a fair deal. Relief washed over Eli. He followed Mr. Higgins to a pen where dozens of identical black and white calves milled about. But one of them was different. He was a little smaller, a little more unsure, and he was all alone in a corner. Eli knew, with a sudden certainty, that this was the one. This was Bella's baby. The search was over. Now he had to bring him home. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows across Eli's farm as his truck and trailer returned, kicking up a small cloud of dust on the gravel driveway. Inside the barn, Bella lifted her head. She had been dozing in the soft straw, but a deep, instinctual feeling pulled her from her rest. Her large ears swiveled forward. She could hear the familiar sound of Eli's engine, but this time it was different. This time, the air carried a scent that made her heart beat faster. It was a smell buried deep in her memory, a smell that meant everything. She let out a low, questioning moo and pushed herself to her feet, her entire body tense with a hopeful anticipation she had not felt since her baby was taken. Eli moved with a purposeful calm. He did not rush. He unlatched the trailer door and reached inside for the small, bewildered calf. The little bull was tired from the journey and confused by all the new smells. He wobbled on his thin legs as Eli carefully lifted him out and set him down on the solid ground. The calf let out a small, plaintive cry, a sound of loneliness and confusion that echoed in the quiet yard. It was a tiny sound, but it was enough. Inside her stall, Bella heard it. Her head shot up, her eyes wide. She answered immediately with a deep, resonant cry that was full of recognition and overwhelming relief. She called out to her baby, her voice strong and sure. Eli smiled and gently guided the wobbly calf toward the open barn door. The little bull, hearing his mother's call, became suddenly more sure. He took a few stumbling steps forward, then a few more, his nose twitching at the familiar scent that grew stronger with every moment. Eli opened the stall door. For one heartbeat, everything was still. Mother and son saw each other. Then, Bella rushed forward, not with anger, but with a love so powerful it filled the entire barn. She buried her nose in her calf's fur, breathing in his scent. She covered every inch of him with her big, rough tongue, licking him and nuzzling him as if to make absolutely sure he was real. The calf, in turn, instinctively nudged at her side, seeking the comfort and the milk he had been missing. He leaned into her warmth, his small body relaxing completely for the first time since they had been parted. Eli stood quietly by the stall door, his work done. He watched as Bella's entire being transformed. The deep sorrow that had shadowed her eyes since the auction vanished, replaced by a fierce, glowing joy. She was whole again. Her body was healing, but now her heart was healing, too. The lonely ache that had been inside her was gone, replaced by the warm, wiggling presence of her calf. She talked to him in soft, low moos, and he answered with little murmurs of his own. They were a family again. The barn, once just a place of shelter, was now filled with a contented peace. Eli knew then that no amount of money could ever equal the value of this single moment. He had not just saved one animal. He had mended a bond that was never meant to be broken. The turning of the seasons brought a profound peace to Eli's farm. Spring's gentle rains gave way to the long, warm days of summer, and Bella's recovery was now complete. The weak, bleeding creature from the auction pen was gone, replaced by a strong, glossy-coated cow whose eyes held a deep and gentle calm. Her son Buddy grew at an astonishing rate, his spindly legs filling out into sturdy pillars, his playful energy a constant source of motion in the pasture. They were inseparable. Where Bella grazed contentedly on the sweet clover, Buddy was never more than a few steps away, sometimes nudging her side or lying down close enough to feel her warmth. This pasture was their kingdom. It was a rolling green field bordered by an old wooden fence and shaded by a giant oak tree. It was here that Bella was introduced to the other members of Eli's unusual family. There was Clover, a retired draft horse whose gentle nature made him a peaceful giant. At first, Bella was cautious, but Clover simply blinked his soft eyes and went back to grazing, accepting her without question. Scout, the three-legged dog, would often amble over, his tail wagging in a slow, friendly rhythm. He would find a cool spot in the shade of Bella's large body and curl up for a nap, and she did not seem to mind his presence one bit. This was not a farm of work and production.
It was a farm of being.
Eli did not come to the pasture with a milk pail or a lead rope. He came with a bucket of special grain, or just to sit on the fence and watch them all. There were no demands placed upon Bella. Her purpose was simply to live, to enjoy the sun on her back, to raise her calf, and to be free. This freedom was the greatest gift he had given her. It was a gift she repaid 1,000 times over with her quiet, steady presence. A bond of absolute trust grew between them. Bella learned the sound of Eli's footsteps and the particular whistle he used when he called them in for a treat. She would often amble over to the fence line when he was there, not asking for anything, but just to be near him. She would allow him to run a hand along her smooth neck, her eyes half closing in contentment. She understood in her own way that this man was different. He was the one who had not looked away. He was the one who had brought the pieces of her world back together. Her life was no longer a story of loss and fear. It was a story of green grass, of a healthy, happy calf, of a quiet barn, and of a human whose kindness had changed everything. On this farm, she was not a thing to be used. She was Bella, and that was enough. The golden light of a late summer afternoon settled over the pasture, painting everything in a warm, gentle glow. Eli leaned against the weathered top rail of the fence, one boot resting on the bottom rung. His eyes scanned the scene before him, a sight that filled him with a quiet, deep satisfaction. Beneath the sprawling branches of the ancient oak tree, Bella stood contentedly, her coat sleek and healthy. Her son Buddy, now grown sturdy and strong, grazed nearby, his tail occasionally swishing at a fly. The old horse Clover dozed standing up, and Scout the dog snored softly in a patch of clover. It was a picture of perfect, peaceful stillness. Eli's mind drifted back to that cold, dusty auction yard. He remembered the sight of Bella, broken and bleeding, and the feeling of resolve that had settled in his heart. Everyone else had seen a lost cause, a creature with no value left to give. But he had seen something else. He had seen a life. He had seen a mother's heart that was shattered. In that moment, his choice had been simple. It was not a business decision. It was a human one. That single act of kindness had created a ripple effect that was still spreading across his farm. He had not just saved one animal from a sad end. He had rescued a mother and reunited a family. He had given Buddy a life he would never have known. The joy of their reunion was a living thing, a tangible force that made the whole farm feel brighter. Some people would never understand spending money on an animal that would never earn it back. But as Eli watched Bella turn her head to nuzzle her grown son, he knew a truth that felt as solid as the earth beneath his feet. Some things have a value that cannot be measured by money. The story of Bella was not about being bought and sold. It was a story about seeing value where others see none. It was about the power of a second chance. It was about the courage to be kind in a world that often forgets to be. It proved that one person's compassion could rewrite an ending, turning a tale of tragedy into one of hope and belonging. On his farm, that kindness was the most important crop he grew, and it flourished in the heart of a gentle brown cow and her calf, living proof that love is the truest form of freedom. The Yendi